In the early 19th century, a small Jewish family was running for its life. They were not chasing power or dreaming of empires. They were escaping persecution, trying to survive in a world that had suddenly turned hostile to them. And yet, within a few decades, this same family would become so wealthy and influential that people across Asia and Europe would call them the Rothschilds of the East. They built hospitals, schools, libraries, docks, and entire neighborhoods. Their name became permanently etched into the foundations of India's richest city. British royalty welcomed them into elite circles. But behind the philanthropy and grand architecture lay one of the darkest business empires of the 19th century, because the true source of their fortune was not cotton, real estate, or banking. It was opium. This is the story of the Sassoon family, a dynasty that transformed human addiction into imperial wealth, helped reshape Asia's economic history, and quietly faded away once the world began asking questions it could no longer ignore. Today, Mumbai stands as one of South Asia's most powerful cities, a financial and commercial giant and home to billionaires, stock exchanges, and global corporations. But beneath the glass towers and luxury skyline lies a forgotten past. If you trace the origins of modern Mumbai, once called Bombay, one name keeps resurfacing again and again: Sassoon. In the early 1800s, Bombay was a British colonial port city, chaotic, expanding, and filled with opportunity. It was here that the Sassoon family arrived after fleeing Baghdad. They had lost much of their wealth during their escape, but they retained something far more valuable: deep trade knowledge, international connections, and a sharp understanding of political power. The family's patriarch, David Sassoon, was born into influence. His father had served as a powerful treasurer in Baghdad's government, a position that brought prestige but also danger. When the local governor turned hostile, David was threatened, imprisoned, and forced to flee for his life. He escaped first to Iran with his family, but stability there was short-lived. David knew he needed a place where power was centralized and predictable, and British India offered exactly that. At the time, the British Empire was expanding aggressively across Asia. Bombay was being developed into a major trade hub, and the British actively encouraged minority merchant communities to settle there. Jewish traders, in particular, were seen as economically useful and politically harmless. David Sassoon arrived at the perfect moment. Unlike most refugees, he did not arrive empty-handed. He brought with him a carefully built network of merchant contacts stretching across the Middle East. In a world without modern banking, trust and relationships were everything. These connections gave the Sassoons access to capital, markets, and information that most competitors lacked. They moved quickly. The Sassoons invested heavily in cotton mills, shipping, and trade infrastructure. As global demand for cotton surged, especially during disruptions to American supplies, Bombay's cotton industry exploded. Entire districts of the city grew around Sassoon-owned factories. Ironically, many of those same areas would later become home to luxury towers, corporate headquarters, and billionaire residences. But cotton was never the real source of their wealth. It was only the respectable front. The true engine of the Sassoon fortune was opium. In the 19th century, Britain was desperate to solve a massive economic problem. The British consumed huge quantities of Chinese tea, silk, and porcelain, but China had no interest in British goods and demanded payment in silver. This trade imbalance was draining Britain's reserves and threatening its economy. The solution was ruthless and calculated: flood China with opium grown in British-controlled India. Opium was addictive, destructive, and devastating. But Chinese consumers would pay for it in silver. The Sassoons recognized the opportunity and moved decisively. Within a few decades, they became the largest private opium traders in the world. Some estimates suggest they controlled as much as 70% of the global opium trade. The scale was staggering. Tens of thousands of opium chests were shipped into China every year, each weighing more than 100 pounds. Coastal cities were overwhelmed by narcotics. Millions of people became addicted. Families collapsed, communities disintegrated, and China was pushed into social and economic chaos. While this destruction unfolded, the Sassoons were becoming unimaginably rich. Their wealth bought more than factories and ships. It bought protection. Opium revenue made up a significant portion of Britain's income from India, and the Sassoons were essential to maintaining that flow of silver. In return, the British Empire shielded them, supported them, and elevated them. In a deeply racist imperial system, the Sassoons received privileges almost unheard of for colonized subjects. David Sassoon was granted British citizenship. His sons received honors and recognition. The family was welcomed into elite circles that were normally closed to non-Europeans. Their loyalty to the empire made them indispensable. In Bombay, the Sassoons used philanthropy to convert blood-stained wealth into respectability. They built hospitals, schools, libraries, synagogues, docks, and public institutions. To ordinary Indians, the family appeared generous and benevolent. Few questioned the origins of the money when they could see its benefits in their daily lives. Their influence became so deep that even the city's tram system adapted to their needs, issuing special Sabbath passes so Jewish passengers could ride without handling money on Saturdays. This was not merely wealth. It was power embedded into the fabric of the city.
Their reach soon extended beyond India. The Sassoons purchased vast estates in England and entered the highest levels of British society. They socialized with aristocrats, cultivated ties with the royal family, and moved comfortably within elite circles. One Sassoon son became a close companion of the Prince of Wales, the future King Edward VII. The ultimate symbol of their status came through marriage. The Sassoon family forged ties with the Rothschilds, uniting two Jewish dynasties that played central roles in British imperial dominance. The Rothschilds financed wars and governments, while the Sassoons supplied the opium that balanced Britain's trade deficits. Together, they represented two pillars of empire, yet beneath the wealth and titles, tension simmered. Later generations of the Sassoon family became increasingly embarrassed by their Eastern origins. Some distanced themselves from India entirely. Others grew uncomfortable with the source of their fortune, even as they continued to live off it. Despite their efforts to assimilate into British society, they could never fully escape the reality that their empire was built on addiction and exploitation. Internal conflicts soon weakened the dynasty. Family disputes split the business into rival firms, each controlled by different branches of the Sassoon family. Instead of dominating the opium trade together, they competed against one another, eroding their collective power. At the same time, global attitudes toward opium began to shift. Moral outrage grew, and governments started discussing restrictions and bans. The Sassoons attempted to adapt. They invested heavily in banking, insurance, shipping, railways, and real estate across Europe, India, and America. They adopted new technologies like the telegraph and vertically integrated their businesses, controlling everything from transportation to insurance. Yet despite these efforts, opium remained at the core of their wealth. Even decades after international agreements claimed to end the trade, Sassoon money was still tied to narcotics flowing into East Asia. One family member even commissioned a crest featuring a poppy flower, a symbol of opium, worn proudly rather than hidden. For them, it was simply business. In the 20th century, the family made a dramatic gamble. A major branch of the Sassoon Empire relocated to Shanghai, then one of the world's most dynamic commercial cities. For a brief period, the move seemed brilliant. Sassoon properties in Shanghai were worth billions in today's terms, and the family once again sat at the center of global trade. When Jewish refugees fled Nazi persecution in Europe, Shanghai was one of the few places that accepted them without visas. More than 20,000 refugees arrived, many aided by the same Baghdadi Jewish network that had once supported the Sassoons themselves. For a moment, the family appeared to have redeemed part of its legacy.
But history turned again. The rise of Chinese nationalism and later communist rule led to widespread nationalization. Foreign-owned assets were seized almost overnight. The Sassoon Empire in Shanghai collapsed and billions in wealth vanished. By the mid-20th century, the Sassoon dynasty was finished as a global force. The businesses that once dominated trade routes and cities fell into obscurity. The family faded from public view, leaving behind buildings, institutions, and unanswered questions. Some believe the Sassoons never truly disappeared, that their wealth simply dissolved into new structures, trusts, and names. Because fortunes of that magnitude rarely vanish. They transform. The Sassoon family began as refugees fleeing persecution. They rose by aligning themselves with the most powerful empire of their age. They built cities and institutions while profiting from one of the most destructive trades in human history. Their empire did not collapse because of outside enemies alone, but because of internal decay, changing morals, and a world that could no longer look away. Their story is a reminder that history's greatest fortunes are rarely clean, and that philanthropy often serves as a mask for sins too large to confront.